What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Mind Something. If you're new here, my name is Jake, and in today's video, we're going to talk about Intel cutting the CEO stock payouts. Intel's also launching a pay-as-you-go feature. The GPU market is nosediving. AMD is hiding efficiency comparisons to NVIDIA. Is MSI Afterburner stealing your passwords? And then lastly, the creator of Radiant did an interview that I want to show you guys. So before we get into it, do me a favor, hit the like and hit the subscribe if you haven't already. And let's just jump straight in. So Intel cut CEO stock payouts amid layoffs. Intel said Tuesday it reduced potential stock payouts for CEO Pat Gelsinger after fielding complaints from investors. The cuts come as employees are bracing for layoffs across the company, part of a broader plan to reduce corporate spending. The compensation changes reflect a desire to further strengthen the alignment of Mr. Gelsinger's new hire performance-based equity awards with his commitment to long-term stockholder value creation, Intel said in a regulatory filing Tuesday. In practice, though, the reform could be mostly symbolic because Intel's declining share price may have put many of Gelsinger's stock awards out of reach. Intel lured Gelsinger away from his job running software maker VMware last year with a compensation package valued at an extraordinary $179 million. Nearly all of that value came in stock bonuses Gelsinger would only receive if the company's share price climbed. In practice, the opposite happened. The stock has fallen from $61.81 when Intel hired Gelsinger in February of 2021 to $29.15 in early trading Tuesday. Investors have fled Intel in part because of the exorbitant cost of Gelsinger's turnaround plan. He has committed to spend $60 billion building new factories in Arizona, Ohio, and Europe, and billions more to revive Intel's engineering capabilities. Even as Intel embarked on a building binge, the company's sales are in steep decline because of reduced demand for PCs and intense competition from rival chip makers. Intel has begun laying off staff as part of a plan to save $3 billion next year and billions more in the future. Intel has acknowledged that investors were unhappy with Gelsinger's outsized potential payouts, noting earlier this year that some stockholders sought to understand the need for the magnitude of the CEO's new hire equity awards. On Tuesday, the company said it revised Gelsinger's new hire payout to make them more difficult to achieve. For example, to receive some performance-based stock options, the company's share price must increase to $74.47 instead of $64.54 as originally required, and the stock must stay above that higher threshold for 90 consecutive days instead of 30. Intel said it is making other reforms to its executive pay practices after careful review and deliberation of the feedback Intel received from its stockholders during extensive engagement regarding the company's core compensation programs and disclosures. Intel said Tuesday it will limit cash bonuses, require performance payouts to be based on multiple years of strong performance, and won't use stock price as the sole basis for future hiring bonuses, among other changes. Separately, Intel announced Tuesday that it had appointed Barbara Novick, co-founder of the investment firm from BlackRock, to its board. And trade publication The Register reported that Randir Thakur, head of Intel's new contract manufacturing business, will leave the company early next year. So this, number one, this is some pretty big news. The co-founder of the investment firm BlackRock is now taking a seat on the board at Intel. Interesting indeed. And then, of course, getting back to the main article here, cutting Pat Gelsinger's pay based off of stock price performance. I think this was something we could have saw coming a mile away. I'm sure he saw it as well. This is probably just a PR move to appease those that would be an uproar of them laying off employees in droves while this guy's taking huge payouts from stock prices, right? So it's interesting to see the moves that Intel is making right now. And speaking of Intel, let's continue with this. So Tom's Hardware had this article, Intel officially introduces pay-as-you-go chip licensing. Now, before I get into this article, I want to go ahead and give partial opinions here. This is garbage. This is, how everything has been going over the past decade or so. This pay-as-you-go model, you'll own nothing and be happy. But just keep that mindset in regards as we get into this. So Intel has officially revealed its Intel On Demand program that will activate select accelerators and features of the company's upcoming Xeon Scalable Sapphire Rapids processor. The new pay-as-you-go program will allow Intel to reduce the number of SKUs it ships while still capitalizing on the technology it has to offer. Furthermore, its clients will be able to upgrade their machines without replacing actual hardware or offering additional services to their clients. Intel's upcoming Intel's 4th generation Xeon Scalable Sapphire Rapids processors are equipped with various special purpose accelerators and security technologies that all customers do not need at all times. To offer such end users additional flexibility regarding investments, Intel will deliver them to buy its CPUs with those capabilities disabled, but turn them on if they are needed at some point. The software-defined silicon SDSI technology will also allow Intel to sell fewer CPU models and then enable its clients or partners to activate certain features if needed, to use them on-prem or offer them as a service. The list of technologies that Intel wants to make available on demand includes software guard extensions, dynamic load balancer, Intel Data Streaming Accelerator, Intel In-Memory Analytics Accelerator, Intel In-Memory Analytics Accelerator, and Intel Quick Assist technology to accelerate specific workloads. Since Intel's on-demand technologies are aimed at entirely different workloads, very few customers will need all of them at once, but as they scale their data centers, they may require some of them, which is when the on-demand capability comes into play. Meanwhile, some of Intel's customers will offer those capabilities as a service, example for cloud and co-hosting machines. In contrast, others will contribute to activating them on servers installed on-premise. The formal rollout of Intel On Demand program leaves more questions than answers. We do not know how much Intel plans to charge to activate certain features or how much its clients will want to start them as a service. We know that companies like H3C, HPE, Inspur, Levino, Supermicro, PhoenixNap, and Veriscale will be a part of the on-demand program. For now, Intel's on-demand program is reserved for servers, and we would expect it to remain a prerogative of Xeon platforms. Meanwhile, back in the day, Intel offered software upgrades for its desktop processors to make them run faster. Unfortunately, that program faced criticism as Intel essentially crippled its perfectly fine processors. As a result, some might think the on-demand program mimics the ill-fated Intel upgrade service. Still, keeping in mind that the server world behaves differently than the client PC world, and that we do not know the terms of Intel's on-demand, we would not draw parallels here until we know all the details. Well, I'm going to draw some parallels here and say, if this is the type of shenanigans that they're going to pull on, server-grade equipment, why wouldn't we expect them to dump something like this on retail? And, considering this type of business model is very popular in industries such as cellular, I mean, you name it. It's just in everything. Streaming services, what have you. They're all moving to a pay-as-you-go type of model, which, in a way, I think a la carte is viable in certain instances. But when it comes to buying a piece of hardware that does not have all of the capabilities unlocked upon purchase, I find a bit aggravating, and I don't think it's the right way to approach it. Now, it may be the best thing from a company standpoint, but as a consumer, it's definitely not the direction I want to see things going. So keep your eyes peeled. If you see something like this coming to retail, I highly recommend voicing your opinion on it. Then we've got another article from Tom's Hardware. GPU market nosedives, sales lowest in a decade. Shipments of integrated and discrete graphics processing units dropped to a 10-year low in the third quarter as PC OEMs reduced procurements of CPUs and gamers lowered their purchases of existing graphics cards while waiting for next generation products. Love how they don't mention anything about miners. In contrast, here we go. Miners ceased to buy graphics boards due to the changes that happened to Ethereum. In general, sales of standalone graphics cards for desktops hit a multi-year low. Usually, PC makers increase procurement of PC hardware components in the third quarter as they assemble computers to sell them in back-to-school and holiday seasons when sales are high. But as demand for PCs softened, recently manufacturers initiated inventory corrections and lowered their components buying to sell off what they already have. As a result, sales of integrated and discrete GPUs dropped to 75.5 million units in Q3 of 2022, down 10.5% sequentially and 25.1% year over year, according to John Petty Research, JPR. In addition, shipments of desktop GPUs fell by 15.43% and notebook GPUs decreased by 30%, which is the most significant drop since the 2009 recession. So here's a little chart showing you Q3, Q2, and Q3 again. The third quarter is usually the high point of the year for GPU and PC suppliers, and even though the suppliers had guided down in Q2, the results came much below their expectations. Since Intel is the largest producer of CPUs, it is also the largest supplier of PC graphics cards. The company increased its domination and commanded 72% of the PC GPU market in Q3 of 2022, as shipments of its GPUs rose 4.7%. By contrast, NVIDIA's dropped to 16% as it lost 19.7% of sales, whereas AMD's share collapsed to 12% as its GPU shipments fell 47.6% sequentially. Increasingly, sales of standalone graphics cards for desktops, including the best graphics cards for gaming, decreased to 6.89 million, or by 33.5% quarter over quarter, the lowest quarterly results in years. Here's another little chart for you. All the companies give various and sometimes similar reasons for the downturn: the shutdown of crypto mining, headwinds from China's zero-tolerance rules and rolling shutdowns, sanctions by the U.S., user situation from the purchasing run-up during COVID, the Osborne effect on AMD while gamers wait for the new AIBs, inflation and the higher prices of AIBs, overhang inventory rundown, and a bad moon out tonight, said Paddy. Generally, the feeling is Q4 shipments will be down, but ASPs will be up, supply will be fine, and everyone will have a happy holiday. We sure are hearing this phrase, everything is fine, quite a bit lately, but that doesn't seem to be the case. But yeah, it's interesting. We just talked about on the previous video, is it time to buy a GPU? And looking at articles like this from Tom's Hardware saying that the GPU market has nosedived, we're seeing the lowest sales since 2009 in the previous crash. I think there's still some room to go down, but for those of you who are out there looking to pick up some used GPUs, the GPU used market looks very attractive right now. But do your own research and not financial advice, right? So let's take a look at this article from Hot Hardware. Here's why AMD removed a Radeon RX 7000 efficiency comparison to the RTX 4090. So when AMD revealed its RX 7900 series GPUs earlier this month, its presentation focused on comparing against its own previous generation parts. There were some comparisons to the GeForce RTX 4080 in the press materials, but nothing comparing the parts to the GeForce RTX 4090. That may change. May have been terrible writing. Who freaking proofreads this stuff? Anyway, that may change have been made very late in the preparations for the announcements because there are still references to remove slides making such a comparison. Buried in the footnotes, let's see here, number RX 841 describes a comparison of some sort between a Radeon RX 7900 XTX and a GeForce RTX 4090. The comparison was apparently across 4 games: Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Dying Light 2, Far Cry 6, and Red Dead Redemption 2. Given that the footnote reproduced below talks about performance per watts, we can figure that it was probably an efficiency comparison. As you have probably surmised already, the footnote isn't referenced anywhere in the slide deck. That's because there are no slides that mention the GeForce RTX 4090. We asked about the omission of NVIDIA's newest GPU at the meeting. AMD said it was focused on competing with the RTX 4080, and since the GPU wasn't out yet, it didn't make sense to compare against it. Well, why the hell would you say it's because it's going to compete against the 4080 and then there's nothing to compare it against? It makes no sense at all. The excuse obviously doesn't work for the RTX 4090 though, so why would AMD have cut a comparison to that part? Most likely someone at AMD looked at the slides and said, this isn't an apples to apples comparison because the RTX 4090 is faster and more expensive than our GPU. Certainly it's true that efficiency can be measured without matching performance, but the reality is that most people will be happy to let efficiency slide a bit for better performance if it's a big enough gap. So it's possible that AMD scrapped the comparison because it was kind of shady. The footnote remarks that the performance per watt was calculated not based on actual power draw, but instead on the rated total board of the cards. In our and others' testings, the GeForce RTX 4090 typically comes in well below the rated 450 watt total board power during gaming. If the Radeon RX 7900 XTX rides along or exceeds its 355 total board power, that could actually make the comparison come out in NVIDIA's favor, or at least much closer than an AMD would like. To be clear, it really wouldn't be too surprising if the RTX 4090 is more efficient than the Radeon RX 7900 XTX. After all, NVIDIA's chip is fabricated on a refined version of its 5nm process known as 4N, where AMD uses a mix of foundries, 5N and 6N processes for its parts. It will be interesting to see how that comparison shakes out in our review of the new Radeon. That's on the way, so keep your eyes peeled. So obviously this has some implications when it comes to mining, and that's why I wanted to bring this article up. If you take a look at things that were being said previously, so for example, back on May 17th of 2022, AMD argues Radeon graphics cards offer better performance and power consumption per dollar than NVIDIA's GPUs, and it gives the wattage comparison and efficiency as well. Excuse me. And then also, here's an article back from June 9th of 2022. AMD Next Gen RDNA 3 Radeon RX 7000 brings more than 50% performance per watt over RDNA 2 5nm advanced chiplet packaging with Next Gen Infinity Cache. So the big question is, are we getting anywhere close to what was promised? And we'll have to wait for benchmarks. That way we can look at games and those benchmark results and take a look at power to figure out where we're at. However, I want to go back to something that you guys are probably sick and tired of hearing at this point, but the TPA calculator, where I was basically inputting all of the specs from the different GPUs, something has changed drastically about what was leaked and what we're getting now. So if you take a look at things like the stream processors, so the 7900 XTX, the 7900, all of these numbers that you're seeing on this chart right here, in reality, are way, way, way lower than what was expected. This is what was published on, I think it was Tech Power Up. Yeah, it was Tech Power Up. So I gathered all of this information from Tech Power Up, and none of this stuff is accurate. Even the base clock speeds and the boost clock speeds. Look at this. Initially was reported at 2600 to 3200. On a 7800 XT, it was reported 2400 to 2600. And look at what it is now. Let's scroll down here a little bit. Yeah, base clock 1825, game clock 2015, boost clock 2250. I mean, we're not even in the same ballpark. This is like completely different generations apart as far as the performance that was being leaked by these so-called leakers, you know? So everybody touted all the leakers as being, what's the right word here? They've had a good track record in the past, so to speak, and that does not appear to be the case anymore. I'm certainly not going to put much stock into whatever all of these leakers have said in the past going forward, and I would recommend that you also not do the same. So definitely don't, make decisions based on leaked stuff that you're hearing. And going back to mining capability, this hash rate predictor that I got, this is also based off of those leaked numbers. Now, I did go in here and start to edit these things, but it looks like efficiency and hash rate on the 7000 series is not going to be anywhere close to what I expected. Now, as far as efficiency is concerned, that remains to be seen. But as far as hash rates that we were expecting out of these cards, I don't think it's coming, guys. This particular generation from both AMD and NVIDIA is very disappointing from what I can tell so far as mining performance is concerned. I hate to say it. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but for those of you who started getting rid of your 3000 series GPUs expecting, these to be, outperform them, man, I feel for you. I really do. So anyways, moving on. Let's talk about an issue with MSI Afterburner and where you potentially download it from. You could be running into some malware. So if your system has been running sluggishly, you should check if you have the legit version of MSI Afterburner. Is this Cybele? Cybele Intelligence and Research Lab has recently uncovered a phishing campaign to infect gamers with cryptocurrency miners and information stealers through fake MSI Afterburner software. The firm has identified around 50 phony websites over the past 3 months. MSI Afterburner is one of the more popular graphics card software for monitoring, tweaking, and overclocking the best graphics cards on the market. Therefore, it doesn't come as a shock that threat actors are impersonating MSI software. It's not the first time that perpetrators are targeting MSI Afterburner either. MSI detected a similar incident last year. However, it would seem that the threat actors back at it again now that NVIDIA is rolling out its GeForce RTX 4000 series graphics cards and AMD is on the brink of unleashing Radeon RX 7900 series. The criminals couldn't find a better time to set up shop. The modus operandi consists of distributing the malware through phishing emails, online advertisements, forums, and other mediums. The phishing websites look precisely like MSI's official Afterburner download page. You can spot fraud by looking at the domain names. Cybele has identified some of the fake domains, such as MSI Afterburner-download.site, MSI Afterburner.download, and MSI Afterburners.com. Some are already offline, but more are bound to show up. The malware infects the victim system with an XMR miner that stealthily connects to a mining pool to harvest Monero. Meanwhile, the program simultaneously steals the hijacked user's sensitive information like computer name, username, and other data. If you just got a brand new graphics card or need to re-download MSI Afterburner, remember to get it from MSI website and avoid third-party distributors. If you're using Google, look at the website's URL carefully before clicking. And yes, very good advice. So for those of you guys out there who have recently got MSI Afterburner and are unsure, I highly recommend that you do your due diligence. And at the very least, if you're unsure, just remove it, wipe it, check for malware, go download it from the correct source. Anyways, I know that's been a lot of reading. For those of you guys who stuck around, thank you. Let's get into some other stuff. Let's go ahead and take a look at profitability on the farm real quick. So right now, Caspa is still profitable at $1.67. Neoxa, negative $5.21. Ravencoin, negative $5.41. So it looks like a lot of hash rate is moving off some of these other coins and moving over to Caspa. And now our negative numbers are not looking so bad on Kapow. And then we've got Flux coming in at negative $5.94 and Ergo negative $3.30. Now I've been paying attention to both Flux and Ergo's difficulty and they are dropping, so don't sleep on those guys. I know that you're probably trying to pick up something that's profitable like Caspa or Radiant, but there may come a time where it makes sense to swap over and pick up some of these other legacy coins, so to speak. Now, speaking of Caspa, look at this difficulty. We are currently up to 433 terahash on Caspa, which is, it's climbing, and it doesn't look like it's stopping anytime soon. And as far as Caspa is concerned, it's still doing extremely well. I think it was up another 20% today at some point. Let's take a look at the one-day chart here. So yeah, we got all the way up to 0.00938. We are currently sitting at 0.0088 at the time of recording, which is about 8 o'clock in the evening on Friday, November 25th, 2022. And you know, I actually did a lot of testing with the LOL Miner 1.63 over the holiday, and I'm going to share those results with you guys and what I found and some of the overclocks that I think may help you in the next video, so stay tuned for that. In fact, that will probably release the same day that you are watching this video, if not shortly after, maybe the following day. Anyways, taking a look at Radiant, we also had a very significant pump in Radiant over the past 24 hours. Now, this is a 1 hour chart, basically from the beginning of Radiant to where we currently are now. Just wanted you guys to get a pretty clear picture of how we're doing. And let's zoom in on this chart here. So this green candle is what you would call a bullish engulfing candle, followed by another strong candle here. Now we're currently coming back down, and we'll probably retest some of these levels. However, Radiant is starting to get a little bit of attention. Let's take a look at the hash rate currently. Now I'm not on our plant, but I do like this little chart that they have here. So you can see we dropped down to about 24 terahash yesterday at about 2 a.m. And then we peaked up here to around 32 terahash. We're currently sitting at about 29 terahash. And as you can see at the moment, pumped 33%. At one point today when I looked at it, it was up 44% on the 24-hour, which is pretty awesome. And currently I am on Viper.net, and I just switched things over from mining Caspa, doing my test with LOL Miner 1.63, and profitability. Now this hasn't been mining for 24 hours, so this is subject to change. I think we'll probably come in somewhere around $12 or $13 per day for my farm. Oh, looks like we got a rig offline. What is offline? Let's see. Coruscant, Alderaan, Naboo. Oh, it's my desktop. That's what's missing. Anyway, so currently sitting at about 22 gigahash total on Radiant. And yeah, you guys know I go back and forth, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about Radiant. I noticed in the Discord that someone posted this particular video. It's basically an interview with the creator of Radiant, who anonymously goes by Atoshi in this particular video. I think he has also gone by Attila in Telegram. But yeah, there's just one or two things that I wanted to play for you guys. Now, I'm going to play this on a faster speed so that it doesn't take so long to get to, but we got about a minute worth of dialogue here that may answer some of your questions about the utility of Radiant and what sets it apart from some of these other coins. So let's go ahead and take a listen here.
To be something stable for people to build on. I can't say how it will go because I don't have a say over the network and the miners and their own independent initiatives. I really do hope that they see the philosophy and the idea behind it and largely keep to the idea of highly efficient smart contracts, peer-to-peer value exchange, as well as auditability and transparency in the ledger. That's one of the important things. Like Bitcoin, is that it's completely auditable. It's not anonymous. It is a completely traceable transaction system that allows you to verify history, as well as the ownership of the coins, as well as any digital assets that people have created.
That's awesome. And you mentioned philosophy in there, so I'm curious, what is the philosophy of app building on Radiant that gives it more utility over other blockchains?
Well, the Radiant, I like to think, is the best of something like the UTXO architecture of Bitcoin. It's the coin model, and then the Ethereum account model, or Solana, or these other blockchains. There's the account model that's really simple to program. But with Radiant, you really do get to have, you get your cake, you get to have your cake and eat it too, where you have the massive parallelism, but you also have the account addresses that you can use. And it's up to the developer on which aspect they'd like to use and what trade-offs. As far as I'm aware, this is kind of the first system or blockchain that enables both. Huh. Now, Radiant is, the philosophy is that with these, I call them induction proofs. I call them like proofs of history. You're able to validate that the assets belong to someone instantly. You don't need to index the entire blockchain to know which coins belong to who or which assets belong to who. You can just verify with a simplified payment verification, SPV proof. You can verify. And so what this enables is developers to build self-evident or easily verifiable programs that other blockchains just do not provide, or if they provide, that they're really, really inefficient. So with this system, we can now shard the blockchain using something called UTXO sharding, or UTXO views, where you can run independent nodes that slice off the part of the blockchain that's relevant to your application. So instead of indexing the global blockchain UTXO state, you can just, for your application, you can just index your users' assets, your user profiles, and ignore the rest of the data in the blocks. So I call this agent nodes, like you call them Radiant agents or Bitcoin agents, where instead of indexing everything, it's just filtering the relevant parts. It's still downloading the full blocks, verifying the headers and the proof of work, but then it's discarding everything else. So in this regard, you can have, let's say, for example, 5 gigabyte block sizes. You can download that on a Raspberry Pi in real time on a 100 megabit per second internet connection, and you're discarding 99.9% of the block.
Anyways, we're going to pause there, and I just want to wrap this up by saying that Radiant is the best of both worlds when it comes to Bitcoin and Ethereum, having a great proof of work system, as well as the capability of smart contracts. But he's really simplified this in a way that you can verify assets, whether that be your NFTs, whether it be some type of smart contract, whether it be the asset that itself, such as the coin. But one thing that he keeps touching on in this particular interview is He does not have control over this project anymore, guys. And the reason that he doesn't is because it was free to use the moment it was launched. It was a fair launch. There's no pre-mine. There is no development fund. There is just simply the blockchain and the creation of it. And it's there for us to create what we want on it. And it is going to take a lot of time for development because the type of project that it is with no VCs backing this. But it's what we want to see, and it's a project that we should stand behind. And, you know, comparing this to something like Caspa, they're in completely separate categories in a way, but that doesn't invalidate the use of Radiant in any way. So I highly recommend that you guys go and watch this entire video. I will leave the link to in the description below, so go give it a watch for yourself. And that's all I got for this video. Stay tuned for the next one, where I'm going to cover the LOL Miner 1.63. I should have that out later today or perhaps tomorrow, and perhaps you guys can get a really good glimpse behind the scenes on my overclocks and figure out how to get over 9 mega hash per watt on your 30 series GPUs. Anyways, that's all I got for you guys today. Hope you enjoy the content. Do me a favor, hit that like and hit the subscribe on your way out, and I'll see you on the next one.